class on lesions of the cervix. I have also included lesions of the uterus also under this class. So, what are the pre-malignant lesions of the cervix? That is a lesion in the cervix which can later becomes a carcinoma cervix. And this condition is called cervical intraepithelial neoplasia or CIN. Here there will be histopathological changes of malignancy in the cells like increased mitotic activity, proliferation of immature cells, nuclear atypia and increased nuclear cytoplasmic ratio. And this CIN is of three types: CIN1, CIN2 and CIN3. Etiology of this carcinoma, cervical intraepithelial and carcinoma cervix is the same. It is said to be a viral etiology, that is human papilloma virus. Human papilloma virus 6 and 11 are the low risk groups. They usually produce genital warts. But the high risk viruses are human papilloma virus strain 16 and 18. They will produce carcinoma cervix, carcinoma vagina and vulvar cancer. And this malignancy is only malignancy against which a vaccine is now available. That vaccine is called the human papilloma virus vaccine, which can be given young adolescent children even before sexual exposure. It should be given. There are different types of human papilloma vaccines. HPV vaccines are available. And since there is a pre-malignant stage called the CIN in the etiology of carcinoma cervix, we can have an effective screening strategy for carcinoma cervix. That is, by identifying this pre-malignant stage CIN and treating it, we can prevent a carcinoma cervix. So this is one cancer where there is a defective screening strategy. So what are the different screening methods for cervical cancer? One is cervical smear or cytology. This can be done by a conventional Pap test. That is, all of you might have seen in the OP, we are taking a smear with an air spatula and it is stained with a papinocolostea. And the most recent one is a liquid-based cytology, where the cells are taken in a fixative, that is kept in a liquid, and that is more sensitive than the conventional Pap test. And since this liquid-based cytology and Pap smear needs some lab equipments, in low resource countries like developing countries, WHO is advocating this called a screening method called the VIA, that is visual inspection after applying acetic acid. When we apply acetic acid, the lesions which are abnormal will be stained white, aceto-white areas. So from these areas biopsies can be taken later. So this is just a simple 5% acetic acid to be applied over the cervix. So this is advocated by WHO in low resource settings. And next is visual inspection after application of Lugol's iodine. Lugol's iodine, the normal cervical epithelium will be having mahogany brown color. That is called the VILI, visual inspection after Lugol's iodine. And when should we start the screening? The screening should be started at the age of 21 years or whenever the reproductive activity starts after that. It should be screened every 3 years from 30 years. Stop screening at 65 to 70 years if previous 3 smears are negative. If the patient has undergone hysterectomy, there is no need for screening unless the hysterectomy is performed for CIN2 and CIN3. So, how will you report the Pap smear? It can be squamous cell abnormalities which include atypical squamous cells, ASCUS, and then ASC-H, atypical squamous cells high grade. Then the third report is this is a Bethesda system of classification. Low grade squamous intraepithelial lesion or LSIL. And the fourth is high grade squamous intraepithelial lesion or HSIL. And the fifth one is squamous cell carcinoma in situ. So these are the different types of, the recent terminology, instead of CIN we are using this. Low grade squamous intraepithelial lesion includes CIN1 and 2, and HSIL includes CIN3 and then carcinoma in situ. Then glandular cell abnormality is called abnormal glandular cells of uncertain significance. There is AGUS, and then adenocarcinoma in situ. So the next thing after pap smear is to, when you are suspecting something, the next diagnostic investigation to the cervix is called a colposcopy. It's a visualization of the lower genital tract and a magnification through an instrument called a colposcope. It helps to localize the lesion and take a biopsy from the lesion. It helps to make a diagnosis. And colposcopy is also used for guided ablative procedures. That is, the treatment of CAN1 and CAN2 are numerous ablative procedures using laser, heat or cryo, and for this all these procedures can be done under colposcopy. So what are the treatment modalities of CAN? Can be an ablative procedure or an excisional procedure. That is, ablative means we are destroying the cervical epithelium, the squamocolumnar junction. This can be done using heat when it is called thermoablation. When it is done using cold, it is called cryotherapy. For this, we are using carbon dioxide laser. Then other than ablation, there are excisional procedures. That is LEEP. That is laser excisional. Using a laser, LEEP, large loop excision of the cervical epithelium. Then next is using a knife, we are taking a cone of the cervical epithelium. That is called a cold knife conization. That is also an excisional procedure. Or using a carbon dioxide laser, you can remove a cone of the tissue from the cervix. That is called a carbon dioxide laser cone. And in CAN3, the treatment can be a simple hysterectomy also. Coming to carcinoma cervix. So, as we have already told, the CAN, if not detected at the proper time, it can later become a carcinoma cervix. What are the risk factors for carcinoma cervix? Early marriage, early sexual intercourse, then multiple sexual partners, then vitamin A deficiency. These are said to be the risk factors. So that is why we are starting the screening for this thing, CAN, even after the onset of sexual intercourse. And carcinoma cervix usually occurs in multiparous women between the age of 35 and 65 years. And the main clinical feature is abnormal uterine bleeding. It can be an intermenstrual bleeding, post-coital or a postmenopausal bleeding. And some patients may present with foul-smelling vaginal discharge, pelvic pain and urinary symptoms. What are the signs? When you are examining on perspeculum, you will be seeing a lesion in the cervix. It can be an exophytic growth, a foul-smelling cauliflower-like growth protruding, and the important features of the 4 features of this growth in the cervix are bleeds on touch. That is, when you are just doing a PV, the patient starts bleeding. Then another important feature is friability. That is, it will be a friable mass. When you are doing a PV itself, you may get a tissue for biopsy. So bleeds on touch, friability, and another feature is fixity. That is, this mass will be infiltrating into the surrounding structure. So it will be a fixed. And sometimes it can be even an ulcerative lesion. So friability, fixity and bleeds on touch, and sometimes the mass when necrotic, it will be associated with the foul swelling discharge. And the second type can be an endophytic or an infiltrated type of growth. And sometimes this tumor will be infiltrating into the vagina, and it can involve the uterus and into the parametrial extension. So after the diagnosis is mainly a clinical diagnosis depending upon the extent of the tumor clinically, and sometimes you may have to use modalities like a cystoscopy to know the extent of the tumor into the bladder, or a proctoscopy to know its extent into the rectum, and an MRI to know the infiltration into the ureters, the parametrium. So this investigation should also help other than the clinical staging. And thereby we will stage carcinoma cervix. And the management of carcinoma cervix in the early stage, that is up to stage 2A, it is said both surgery and radiation has equal effects. But depending upon the patient, you have to select whether it's a surgery or a radiotherapy. Suppose it is a young female where she needs a sexual function, because once you are giving radiation to the cervix, the vagina, everything gets tenosed. So such a patient, the surgery is a best method, and the surgery, it is not a simple hysterectomy. What we are doing is an extended hysterectomy. It's called a Werthin's hysterectomy, where you are removing the uterus and a part of the vagina, and also the associated lymph nodes are also removed. In this stage, early stage, radiotherapy is also equally effective in carcinoma cervix because it's a squamous cell carcinoma. In mainly, the commonest type of carcinoma cervix is squamous cell carcinoma. So, suppose a patient is an elderly patient with very other comorbidities. It is preferable to select radiotherapy as a treatment, because the surgery, that is an extended or radical hysterectomy, which takes a longer time, and such a patient may not withstand such a prolonged surgery. So in early stages, both surgery and radiotherapy are equally effective, and you have to select the treatment based on the patient. But in late stages of carcinoma cervix, that is from stage 2B onwards, radiotherapy is a treatment of choice. And the radiotherapy can be both combined external radiation and brachytherapy using intracavitary radium needles into the uterine cavity. So then just a few words about uterine cancer also. The uterine cancer, it is also called endometrial carcinoma. It's the most common gynecological cancer in developed countries. It is primarily a disease of the postmenopausal women occurring in the 6th or the 7th decade. And 75% of these cancers occur after 50 years of age. What are the risk factors for carcinoma endometrium? As I told, it's a age in the postmenopausal women, so they age more than 50 years. Then more in white races. In the Western world, this is a leading cancer. Then other risk factors are hyperestrogenism, so prolonged unopposed estrogen. Then obesity, nulliparous. Then patients with the polycystic ovarian disease where there is an unopposed estrogen. Early menarche and late menopause. Then postmenopausal estrogen therapy, when you are giving estrogen as a hormone replacement therapy, estrogen alone. Then tamoxifen is said to be one etiological factor. It is a selective estrogen receptor modulator that we usually give after the treatment of carcinoma breast, where sensitive to estrogen receptors are present. Tamoxifen is it, but it can sometimes lead to endometrial hyperplasia and endometrial malignancy. Then the medical complications, when the patient is a diabetic hypertensive woman, there is an increased risk of developing endometrium. And it has got a hereditary etiology. It's associated with the hereditary non-polyposis colon cancer syndrome. What are the symptoms and signs in carcinoma endometrium? The patient presents with the postmenopausal bleeding and perimenopausal abnormal uterine bleeding. On clinical examination, the uterus will be enlarged. Sometimes you will be seeing the os will be open, the tumor can be felt inside the uterine cavity. Some cases, there will be pus coming through the os. This condition is called a pyometra. And the spread of the tumor is by direct extension, lymphatic spread, hematogenous spread, and retrograde transtubal spread. So the investigations that we do is transvaginal sonography to assess the endometrial thickness. And the sonosalpingography can be also be done to know the extent of the tumor. And to confirm the tumor, what's the histopathological type, you can take an endometrial biopsy. For the office procedure, it can be a Pipelle using a small plastic cannula. It's called a Pipelle curette. Or you can do a fractional curettage to take the endometrial biopsy. Or you can do a hysteroscopy and a directed biopsy. These are the investigations. And then to know, suppose the diagnosis is carcinoma endometrium by the tissue biopsy, then you have to always do an MRI, which helps to know the staging of the tumor, whether it has infiltrated into the myometrium, into the serosa, and into the adjacent structure. So that MRI is the next investigation that you have to do. And suppose the diagnosis is carcinoma endometrium, adenocarcinoma endometrium, the main primary modality is always surgery. But the surgery except in the very early stage, all of the stages, it should be a total abdominal hysterectomy with the BSO plus lymph nodes. The lymph nodes have to be removed. The pelvic lymphadenectomy as well as para-aortic lymph nodes, depending upon the stage. Then only the surgery will be complete. Only in the early phase, there is less than half of the when only the endometrium is involved. With the myometrium, such condition only you can complete with the hysterectomy alone. But all of the cases we need pelvic lymphadenectomy also. And in other histopathological types like a papillary serous carcinoma, you have to always do an infracolic omentectomy also, just like in the case of a ovarian malignancy. So here the surgery we call it mainly, as in the case of ovarian malignancy, this is called a surgical staging. When you are doing a surgery for a carcinoma endometrium, it is called a surgical staging. So similar to carcinoma ovary, you put a midline vertical incision, inspect all the abdominal organs in a cecocephalot manner. Then ascitic fluid if present should be taken for cytology, or peritoneal washings should be taken for cytology. Then after inspecting all the organs, you proceed with the surgery. We should be a abdominal hysterectomy with the BSO plus pelvic lymphadenectomy and para-aortic lymphadenectomy, depending upon the stage.